And now, coming to you live from Times Square in New York, New York, this is the BounceX Think Tank. Your twice a week, every week, look into behavior online and how we can make the internet more polite. As always, I'm your host, Peter Star Northrop, bringing you this week people-based performance, how to find the correct behavioral moments to utilize social proof in your funnel. Another awesome presentation co-branded by the brilliant minds from BounceX and Trustpilot. Finally, let's slow things down and get into the meat of the show here. So when we're talking about social proof strategy, I just want to see how we're currently utilizing it. So just very broadly, Josue Ledesma over at Trustpilot, let me just, in your view, from what you've been seeing, how are brands currently utilizing social proof, like in broad strokes?
Well, I think the advent of all these different kinds of social media platforms have really put social proof on a pedestal that we haven't seen in a long time. You know, prior to social media platforms like Instagram, like Facebook, like Twitter, really the majority of advertising and marketing was relegated to kind of display ads. But right now, people are really utilizing the voice of their customers in their social media. They're retweeting people, they're reposting, they're interacting with their customers, and then they're taking whatever is seen over there and putting that on their website, on their landing pages, on their advertisements. And that's actually starting to, I'd say, creep into other different platforms that aren't necessarily social media platforms, but they're more of community platforms, and that's something we're seeing on Trustpilot. You know, Trustpilot.com is a consumer site where people can view and leave reviews, and a lot of the content that's being left there, our clients and our companies are actually using them. They're taking reviews that they really enjoy and they're putting them on their website. They're posting them on Twitter, they're posting them on Facebook, and they're posting them on ads, which I think has been a really cool use of our site.
Exactly. And where are you seeing like a lot of that success happen, Josue? Just immediately jumping into sort of audience questions for clarification there. Is there a place where people may not be like placing a lot of that social proof that could be sort of like one of those high octane moments of like high success, or is just keeping it like in that broad web of social proof? Is that just kind of the best strategy to look into so far?
No, so what I'd say is actually, because there are different kinds of social proof, you know, you have reviews, you have testimonials, you have things like usage metrics, how many followers you have or how many people have bought a certain product or used your company. You know, different levels, different kinds of social proof are best utilized at different moments. For example, if you're selling a product and your audience or website visitor is on a checkout page, you really want to put a product review right there because it really will give the buyer that extra nudge or maybe that extra point of confidence that says, oh, this piece of product works exactly the way we want it. But if you are, for example, wanting to capture a broader audience and more top of the funnel channels such as social media, you might want to just highlight your rating. So if you have a 4.8 or a 4.4, you just want to highlight that and get some interest going from whoever is kind of checking out your website or checking out your social media.
Absolutely, and there's a lot to unpack there. We're going to get into more specific strategies as we go through the scope of this presentation. But Daniel Auerbach, I want to bring you in here as well, and just from your perspective on that enterprise side, what have you seen like clients on your end, the way they've been utilizing social proof? Like, is there any sort of real estate people may not be realizing? What are you seeing in terms of sort of that broad social proof web, those reviews, those images? Like, what are you seeing in terms of success there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that there is a lot of room to leverage social proof at all different points of the funnel. I guess most, or very, like our strategy here at Bounce, what we do, how we measure different points of the funnel, we're looking at low intent, medium intent, and high intent visitors very simply. And so from very high level, the way that we are measuring those different levels of intent, or one way that we measure those different levels of intent for, say, a standard e-commerce business is different pages on site. So if somebody is on either a home page or a category page, they haven't shown a lot of affinity for a specific product. So at this point, we really want to establish trust as a brand. And to establish that trust as a brand, you want to leverage social proof on the global level for that brand. So for example, this can be anything from as seen in the New York Times or as trusted by 1 million customers to date, something that's a little bit more broad or a little bit more general. And then as somebody gets a little bit deeper into the funnel, say they are on a specific product page, they're showing really some intent for that product, but maybe they need a little bit more nudging or a little bit more nurturing before they actually make that purchase. So if somebody is reviewing a product or looking at a product and engaging in a product by clicking on different product images, you know they're interested in the product, you know that they're considering whether or not they want to actually purchase that product. That's a really great moment to leverage different reviews that somebody has left on that specific product, assuming that the product obviously has high reviews. We have a couple of clients here that I work with that when somebody is engaging on product images, we'll trigger a little annotation that says this product has been approved and reviewed by 95% of visitors. Of course, we're careful about the reviews and the products that we leverage that messaging. We're only going to leverage that in instances where the product is actually valuable and does have that high, I guess, engagement and high reviews from previous customers.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of opportunity there, too, because there's just so much power in the kinds of social proof you can gather across your site. And we'll get to that momentarily, folks. But when it comes to those main opportunities, Josue, let me bring this back to you. We kind of briefly touched on this earlier, but let's get specific. What are the main opportunities you're seeing in terms of utilizing social proof, both on-site and on-site and in your acquisition strategy? What are those main things you're seeing? If we can just boil it down to like a top 5 or a top 3 even.
I'd say trust is the biggest one. This is something that Danielle had mentioned earlier. I think trust is a really big topic right now, and we're seeing that there's kind of like a crisis in trust right now. There was an Edelman study that really took a global view on trust, and it seems like trust is way down on everything from governments to businesses to people and even experts. And I really think that's going to start showing its ugly head very soon. And I think some businesses, at least the ones we work with, have really kind of taken a proactive approach to that. So Fabletics, I don't know if people are familiar with that brand, but they're a lifestyle apparel brand. They have an entire section of their website dedicated to reviews, and they really run the gamut of the kind of social proof that all companies can take advantage of. So at the top of their website, they can they actually show what their aggregate of reviews are, and I think they're probably a 4.6 across several different measurement or metrics. And then they go a little deeper. They highlight a couple of key reviews from some choice customers, and then even below that, so they really take a kind of a top to bottom funnel strategy with this webpage. Below that, they have more in-depth client stories. So for whoever wants to really see, okay, how are people really interacting with Fabletics? What do people really feel about Fabletics? They have that covered from everywhere, from ratings to reviews to actual client stories. So I think that's one of the main opportunities that brands have. I'd say another opportunity is really using social proof as an extension of customer engagement and customer advocacy. With things like referral marketing, with things like customer advocacy, those strategies, when implemented well, can be so valuable to a company from an ROI perspective, in terms of increasing retention rates, in terms of increasing order values and lifetime values of customers, just because a referral or a recommendation or a review from an existing customer is so valuable because it's really authentic, it's genuine. If used properly, it just can provide enormous benefits. And I think the earlier in the funnel that companies can use that or utilize that, the better. So again, we talked about social media, social proof, it's right there in the name. Definitely companies should be using their own customer's voice, their own customer stories as part of their brand. And then I would say that the third opportunity is actually something I just mentioned, is really taking advantage of social proof as part of your brand. I think for a lot of e-commerce companies who may sell products, it's a little harder to differentiate themselves. I think with service companies where really you kind of make it or break it on the back of your own service. Your reputation and your brand and your credibility matters so much. And I think now that the digital environment is essentially mature for a lot of industries, including e-commerce industries, the competition is higher than it's ever been. So what's actually going to differentiate companies from each other? I think it's their brand. I think it's their reputation. And that's really one of the biggest opportunities where social proof can make a difference.
Absolutely, and that's huge too. And I think we're going to get a lot more specific as we go through the scope of this discussion. So moving on to sort of like section 2 here, when we're talking about what good social proof is and how do we generate it, Josue, can you just take us through, like, let's define our terms real fast, because we've been using that word social proof sort of broadly, and I know when our audience is like, well, what about this? What about that? When we're talking about social proof in the scope of this discussion, what do we mean by social proof? What are the specific kinds that we're going to be discussing throughout the scope of this conversation?
So what I would say is, speaking as a representative of Trustpilot, we're all about reviews right now. You can leave a review on Trustpilot.com. Our clients are actively asking their customers for reviews. So really, reviews are the main social proof that we're talking about right now. I don't want to limit social proof to only say that's all social proof are only reviews, but I think for the purpose of this discussion, that's kind of what we're referring to.
Absolutely. We may also, audience, we may also get into sort of other kinds of social proof as well, but that's the main thing, talking about how to get reviews and how to utilize those reviews. So, like, that's something that we're really excited to bring you on here for, Josue. And let's get into reviews specifically and just get into the idea of how we ask for reviews, because I feel like this is something a lot of brands are having a hard time with, in terms of we have a lot of really great customers, like especially now during the holidays, we just have this mountain of acquisition traffic, like hundreds and hundreds, thousands, like an enormous glut of newly acquired customers, and we have no real idea of like how to sort of scale that review process. So what are those main ways you ask for those moments of social proof? Like, how do you ask for reviews in a way that's sort of respectful of the time of those potential of those clients and of those high LTV customers? Like, what's the game you see play here? I know you can talk about that all day, but let's see if we can't boil it down to a couple of minutes.
Sure thing. So I think the first things first is companies need to ask. In talking to a lot of different clients and prospects, they're kind of scared to ask for reviews. They think, oh, well, they're going to give me a bad review, or they're not going to say anything good. But really, it's the opposite. In what we've seen, and we have over 35 million reviews on Trustpilot.com, we've seen that the companies that aren't asking for reviews often have the most negative reviews. And the companies that do ask for reviews often have very high ratings, because honestly, if you're a company that cares about its customers, that cares about its products, and cares about its services, for the most part, you're going to do a good job, and you're going to get those high marks from other customers. And if you do get some bad reviews, you should pay attention to that and kind of shore up some of your weaknesses. So definitely, first step to getting reviews is to ask for reviews. Email works best. The way our service actually works is we have an automatic feedback service function, which asks for a review as soon as a purchase is complete. And we also actively encourage our companies to ask for reviews and remind consumers to leave a review. So this is a reminder service that you can set either like a week after your first review invitation or a month after. And usually you need to tailor the review solicitation kind of by purchase. If you are, for example, selling a washer or dryer, a big ticket item that has a lot of life in it, you may ask for a reminder 6 months later after purchase, because that purchase is still very relevant. But if you're selling something like an iPhone case, you might just want to send a reminder a week after that. So I think constantly engaging with your customers by reminding them, by sending them those emails, that actually gets those response rates pretty high. I think overall, when it comes to asking for reviews, it really needs to be integrated as part of a customer engagement strategy, which is something that I kind of mentioned in the past. Really, reviews are a two-way street. It's a reflection of companies, but it's also a way to collect feedback for your customers, from your customers and for your customers, because you should be utilizing that feedback in the form of reviews to improve your business and improve your company. So I think by interacting and engaging with your customers, whether you're sending them review emails, whether you're asking for reviews via social media, or even sending out surveys, maybe putting a way to collect a review on your website. Those are all different touch points where you're interacting with your customer and you're telling them, hey, we value your opinion and we want to be better for you.
Yeah, and piggybacking off of that, actually, one thing that I just want to call out is anytime we're asking for a customer for something, at least with the e-commerce clients that I work from, people are busy. People have a lot. They are oversaturated with brands and companies asking them for things. Anytime you're asking a visitor to do something, even if they had a great experience with your site, it's really valuable to tell them what's in it for them. So a couple of really good strategies that I've seen some of my clients use when leveraging getting customers to leave a review. It's either leave a review and get 10% off your second purchase, which is really valuable because we all know working in e-commerce, the first purchase, we usually can get a visitor to make that purchase, but getting the visitor to make the first to second purchase is extremely challenging. And then once you get them to make that second purchase, getting them to buy a third or fourth or fifth time becomes a lot easier. So in doing this, you're accomplishing two things. You're getting that review by leveraging an additional 10% off, but you're also putting them in the mindset of making another purchase as they leave the review. So especially if they had a great experience and they want to buy with you again, they're going to leave you a good review, and then they're also going to come back and redeem that potential promo code.
Absolutely. And then just piggybacking off of that, because we just set up a tiny firestorm in the comments.
Oh.
I know, right? One thing we're all, like, as e-commerce brands, we're beginning to get worried about the concept of over discounting. Oh, you were literally about to jump into that.
Yes.
Damn it. Sorry, Danielle. I'll just let you continue.
Yeah. Again, I completely understand the sensitivity around discounting and incentives and getting somebody to make a second purchase. Not something that all e-commerce brands want to do or even have budgeted to do. So a couple of other things, especially if you're asking for a review or you're asking them to maybe upload an image of them wearing, say you are a fashion brand and wearing a dress that they just purchased, give them the opportunity of potentially being featured. So leave a review and upload this image of you wearing the dress for your opportunity to be featured on our social media accounts. That's one strategy that's completely non-incentivized. And then another one could be a potential for a contest. I've seen brands do that really successfully as well. Maybe you don't want to give an incentive for every second time purchaser, but what you could potentially do is if they leave a review or if they upload an image, giving them the opportunity to be opted into a contest to perhaps a gift card to redeem across your site.
Absolutely, and that there's a lot in there as well, just like how to sort of set up that incentive. Jose, what have you seen be successful on your end in sort of incentivizing that process there? We've seen a lot in terms of discount. We've seen a lot in terms of featuring. Is there anything else you've seen, or is there anything that you'd recommend in terms of how to frame that ask as well, just to make sure we're doing it in the best possible light?
Yeah, sure. So just to be completely frank in terms of the way the position that Trustpilot has, we actually don't encourage companies to offer any incentives when they ask for reviews, just because we don't want them to, we don't want the customer to actually be swayed any which way. Again, you know, we're company facing, but we're also customer facing. So we want whatever review a customer leaves to be as genuine and reflective of what they actually experienced is. So those are actually our company guidelines, and they've worked well in the past. What I would say is, in addition to some of the things that I mentioned before, is really pay attention to the customers who are actively leaving you really high reviews and are maybe leaving you multiple reviews or are editing their reviews to reflect a more positive experience. And that goes into kind of the customer engagement strategy that I've been talking about a little bit throughout this presentation, where if you know who are kind of like your biggest fans, you can then proactively reach out to them, and this is something that Danielle was talking about, and really make them your brand advocate. So you can reach out to them and say, hey, I noticed you've left us various 5-star reviews. How would you like to be featured in X thing? And I think there's also a way to organically do that, similar to what Danielle was talking about in terms of kind of offering these kinds of contests or telling them that they'd be featured on their social media. I think Box does a really good job of doing this. They do a lot of email marketing, and as part of their order fulfillment, they'll say, hey, take a picture of getting your boxed order and then hashtag it box, and you might win, you know, $50 in credit, or you might be featured on our Instagram post. So it's all about, you know, I think giving customers that extra incentive to showcase how a company has made them happy. I think Lululemon does this a lot very well as well. They will often create new kind of lifestyle hashtags. I think one of their most famous ones are hashtag the sweat life, and they just invite their audience to take pictures, use that hashtag, and it doesn't have to be them wearing the apparel. Lululemon is another lifestyle and fitness apparel company, but it's really more about highlighting the kind of lifestyle that Lululemon is known for and is marketing. And if you do search the hashtag the sweat life, you kind of understand exactly what that means. And if you understand what the sweat life means, you understand what Lululemon means. And I think that's actually one of the most powerful ways of using social proof and using your customers to be an extension of your brand.
Absolutely, and pardon me if this is over twisting your words, though, but that becomes its own sort of reward and its own sort of incentive, and that's something that's really cool about Trustpilot. In that when you leave a review on Trustpilot for a brand, you become a part of a community of people who are building that trust for that brand. Is that sort of overselling it, or is that like missing the mark, Josue, or is that a good way of putting it?
No, that's definitely a good point and an accurate point. We actually noticed a lot of the feedback that we were getting, and a lot of the ways that companies were using reviews were organically taking reviews and putting it on their social media. So we thought, how can we make this easier? How can we make this better for companies? And we actually created a review image generator, where essentially companies can take a review that has been left on there about their company, pair it with a really great image. You know, we're using Unsplash, and if anybody's used that, that's a fantastic free to use photography site. And essentially we pair whatever the review said with that image, and we allow you to just post it natively through our platform onto your social media sites. And it's just a very easy way for brands to say, hey, you know, we have these customers who are loyal to us, who have experienced a really great product or really great service because of us. And it really kind of encourages more reviews, but also encourages people to kind of, oh, let me check out that company, that they actually look like they have a following behind them that is passionate.
And there's a lot more to discuss there as well in terms of like how to ask for these reviews and how to make that sort of a respectful relationship. But I want to make sure that as we sort of like cross the halfway mark here, that we're also talking about how to leverage all this amazing social proof, all these amazing reviews that you've been generating, because most of our e-commerce brands here have a lot of great reviews right now. It's just right now we're not super sure where to utilize them in the funnel. And Danielle, you already really set up this conversation super well in terms of like where in the funnel are we going to use that great social proof. We talked about low, medium, and high intent users. I feel like we already have low intent pretty well covered in terms of, hey, like you put reviews on Facebook or on Instagram, or like I don't think in your Google that wouldn't make too much sense in terms of your AdSense strategy. I think we have it there as like an acquisition channel. It's one of those trust building things. Let's get to the middle of the funnel there. Those people who are sort of like, they've gotten to like maybe category intent, a little bit of product intent for our e-commerce folks, and maybe like they're sort of understanding our B2B brands better. What are those best moments in that middle funnel experience to start utilizing that social proof from you that you've seen from the strategies you've been establishing?
Yeah, of course. So I think middle of the funnel, the best place to leverage that social proof is going to be on specific product pages, and incorporating the social proof or reviews that previous visitors or previous customers have left on those product pages specifically. So for example, here at Bounce Exchange, we have one tried and true e-commerce strategy that we run, or rather campaign that we run across many of my e-commerce clients, in which when a visitor is on a product page, we detect behavioral moments based on what their digital body language is, and then based on that digital body language, we'll leverage the review that would be most relevant to them, or the value prop that would be most relevant to them, based on previous reviews that old customers or previous customers have left on that product. I touched a little bit on this earlier, but we're only ever going to use the positive reviews and incorporate that in there, and we're only going to do it on products that we do feel are actually going to add value to the person who is on that specific product.
Absolutely, you just want to be like just like shotgunning random reviews of people. Like it's all like you got to make sure you're highly targeting it. And as you set up your funnel and your sort of segmentation, there's a lot you can do to sort of make sure that the right person is getting that right message at the right time.
Exactly. So I think reviews are incredibly valuable when you are actually considering purchasing a product. Otherwise, it might just feel like noise.
Absolutely.
So one moment of really high intent, for example, that we look at on a product page is when somebody is looking at different product thumbnails. If you're clicking through different product thumbnails, the behavior there is indicative of somebody who is trying to make a purchase decision but isn't completely sure whether or not they want to purchase that. So in that moment, if that visitor is showing that behavior, we're going to leverage a review that shows that this product is highly recommended by the people who have previously purchased it.
Absolutely. And let's that kind of brings us to a quick side discussion that I want to get into when it comes to that sort of middle funnel utilization. Josue, I'm going to bring you into this because you framed this conversation off by saying that the main point of these reviews is building that trust. Like, there's that crisis of trust right now. And a lot of our e-commerce folks who are on this presentation, they have, that sort of like stock of reviews on site. They're not going to change like what reviews are showing, but they can sort of change the order in which they appear. Like they have that sort of control there. And I'm wondering, when it comes to those negative reviews, like how, as you try to curate your on-site experience and you have a few negative reviews, obviously, is it true that it's valuable to have some negative reviews just to make sure you're establishing that you're not, lying, or that it doesn't seem over positive and actually increases the trust? And if that's so, like, how do we make sure that we have that balance between positive and negative reviews for us on our site? Like, how do you navigate that sort of complicated, weird space when it comes to the reviews you display on your own website?
That's a great question, because it's pretty tricky, and it definitely requires a balance. What I'd say in the way that our solution works is that we allow you to display your reviews in a variety of ways, and you can actually customize what reviews are being shown on your site. So you can either do all 5-star reviews, you can do 4 and 5-star reviews, you can do all reviews, and then whoever is more interested in really understanding what reviews have been left on that company, a user can click through and then check out the company's Trustpilot page, and then that's where all of them are showed regardless. So there is customizability there, and we offer an A/B testing tool that just allows you to see which one is more effective. To answer your other question in terms of what to do with negative reviews, I'd say don't be scared of negative reviews. There have definitely been different studies that have shown that a perfect score is actually a little less trustworthy than a great score. So I forget where this study came from, but essentially they were comparing companies that had a perfect 5-star / 5.0 rating, and in companies who had, I think, 4.5, or between 4.0 and 4.5, and the companies that had between 4.0 and 4.5 were actually more trustworthy, or were deemed as more trustworthy. The other thing I'd say is that it's really a quantity game at this point. A lot of companies are actively collecting reviews, so they are amassing a lot of positive reviews. And again, like I mentioned before, if you're collecting reviews, you're more likely to have a positive rating. So at that point, it's really about having more reviews than your competitors, because you're seeing two different kinds of proofs. One is that you have a lot more customers, so you have a little more credibility in terms of having serviced more people. And two, with that bigger audience, you're still getting a high rating, so you're deemed more trustworthy that way.
Absolutely. And audience, I guess one thing that it comes down to is a lot of us are really asking now, like, wait, what's that balance though? Like, is it really, 4.0 to 4.5? Should I try to go like 4.6 maybe? I don't know. When you have that sort of complication, it really depends on your industry as well. So, of course, we can ask our awesome panelists these questions, but it's always going to come down to that annoying, eternal answer for these presentations, which is, it depends. But what I hope you can see here is a sort of framework by which you can test this on your site and see how much negativity you can allow or encourage even to creep into your process here. Because remember, one thing that increases your trustworthiness is demonstrating to your prospects and to your audience how well you deal with negativity and how you correct your mistakes. Like, people, we're human. Like, even on the company side, even on the e-commerce business side, we're going to foul up somehow. So it's really cool to see how we fix that. And that's sort of that ultimate way you can demonstrate that level of trustworthiness and sort of help people deal with that crisis of trust. Let's keep bringing it back to those funnel moments there as we sort of get even closer to the hour here. We talked a little bit about that mid-funnel moment, how to sort of like use those positive reviews to help nudge people along, people who might need to get to that moment where they're sort of finally deciding whether or not they need to trust you. But let's say that's already happened. Let's say we're at that sort of high funnel moment. Danielle, I'm going to bring you into this in Josue, then I'll kind of ask you for commentary as well. When you have that high level moment where people they've abandoned their cart, and you have that ability to send them a cart abandonment email or try to re-engage them somehow, maybe through Facebook retargeting. Where do you see sort of reviews play in there? Would they be more of a distraction, or would they be more of something that's valuable for that sort of real estate? And how can we like navigate that strategy there as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that there are a couple of strategies that we want to consider here. First, let's talk about within a, say, retargeting email. So something's offsite. So the experience is the visitor adds an item to their cart, and then they abandon. What Bounce Exchange does, one of the things that we do here, we'll send that customer a cart abandonment email. Maybe that visitor abandoned because they needed an extra nudge because they weren't sure about that purchase. That's a really valuable moment to incorporate the reviews that you've accumulated on site into the email directly, to give that visitor that additional nudge, that additional incentive to actually make that purchase. The second way, which stems a little bit away from actually utilizing reviews but still leveraging social proof in a really powerful way, is going to be on site. If a visitor has an item in their cart, maybe they're still browsing around the site, but you know, cart abandonment rates are really high. We want people to check out as quickly as possible, especially after they reach that threshold of what a normal AOV is for an on-site purchase. One campaign that we leverage here that's worked really successfully is also incorporating an element of urgency as well as social proof. So the experience would be the visitor adds an item to their cart. At Bounce Exchange, we're able to detect that that item in cart is above the average order value. So you know they're probably not going to add anything else to cart.
Absolutely.
What we are going to leverage in this behavioral moment is saying this item is selling fast, or 6 people have this in their cart right now. Checkout risk is really high. Proceed to checkout now. And then you're pushing them down that conversion funnel even further. So what you're doing here is you're leveraging that other people have this in their cart, so that's that social proof there, and then you're also incorporating an element of urgency for those high intent visitors.
Yeah, and if anything, the social proof kind of helps make the urgency sort of less like jarring and more like it's a way to like sugar to help the medicine go down.
Exactly.
Okay,
yep,
awesome.
Exactly.
Got it right. I love interpreting things. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways for those really high intent moments. Josue, like when it comes to those reviews as well, what have you seen be sort of successful for those high intent moments? Either like in a cart abandonment email. Like, is it something that lives at the top of an email? Is it something that lives on site as you bring people back? Like, what have you seen on your client side be successful in terms of those high intent moments to really lock in what's valuable about these products before that ultimate purchase happens?
Sure. So cart abandonment emails are actually some of the most successful ones to place reviews on. One of our clients, New York Dress, actually was doing an experiment and added a reviews to their cart abandonment emails, and they saw their click-through rates skyrocket. I think 220% in 1 month. And we had to kind of double check their math because we almost didn't believe how successful that was. And we've since then encouraged a lot of other companies to do the same thing, and they've really experienced a lot of success in terms of comparing cart abandonment emails without reviews and then cart abandonment emails with reviews. And when I say reviews, I'd say it could either be reviews or it could be ratings. I'd say really kind of pay attention to the way you're formatting your emails and the way your emails look. If there is space or it makes sense for you to add a review, put that in there. But I think if it feels a little wedged in, just put in your rating. You know, sometimes a 4.8 out of 5 is just as strong as a single person's review. So I think that's one of the best examples that we have. I think another great example, and this is a little less for e-commerce, but definitely for digital marketers, but on key landing pages, I think on your most high traffic landing pages, you definitely want reviews on that, and there are two reasons why. One, we have, you know, I think hundreds of case studies at this point really highlighting how reviews on landing pages have increased conversion rates and really increased revenue. We definitely have some hard numbers on that, but also they show up on your Google advertisement and your paid ad search. They show up as rich snippet stars, and rich snippet stars, in Google's own words, increase CTR on those results by 10%. And Conversion XL just recently, I think it was this month or maybe late October, came out with an article where they were looking at the effectiveness of those rich snippet stars on those paid searches, and they saw that they increased on average click-through rates by 35%. So there's definitely a two-pronged benefit to adding reviews on your key landing pages.
Absolutely. And guys, I'm actually including that Conversion XL article in the chat box if you just check that on that right-hand side of your screen. Really loved what the Conversion XL team had a lot to say there. Josue, it was really cool to see that you and I were having like the same idea talking about that. It's really cool. I was going to bring that up, and then you just kind of brought it up yourself. And audience, I'm just really excited about all the questions we've been getting here. I'm really excited about getting through the lot of this, but unfortunately we're about to hit the hour here. So what I want to make sure is I've loved this conversation. I've loved every minute of it. It's amazing to me that it's gone by so far. I could keep going on for the next sort of like 3 hours just diving into the specific moments of strategy, but unfortunately, you know, time is a thing. We have jobs to get back to and stuff. So I want to make sure that I'm continuing this conversation with y'all as best I can. So before we get to sort of like the sort of general Q&A here on the audience side, ladies and gentlemen, just let me know how you'd like this conversation to continue. Like, what would you like to receive more information on? How would you like us to continue this conversation? Do you hear more about a behavioral audit from Bounce, BounceX, just to see how to make your website and your process about gathering reviews and then utilizing them more behavioral? Would you hear more about the amazing, amazing insights from Trustpilot? Guys, spoiler alert, you want to hear more from these folks. Like, if you're not part of the Trustpilot network, you're doing it wrong. Period. End of sentence. I really love all of the strategies they have in terms of both gathering and utilizing reviews. You got to check these guys out. If you'd like to hear more about both of those things, that's great. If you'd like to hear more about neither, that's also totally fine, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I want to make sure that this conversation continues for y'all exactly the way you want it to. And I really thank y'all so much for all the amazing questions you put forth so far. So with all of that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. Need to share the results with y'all or anything. And let's just keep moving on so we can talk about sort of those LTV moments very, very, very briefly before we get into sort of that general audience Q&A. So one thing, too, that I love about gathering reviews and utilizing them is how it can help people go from that 1 to 2 moment in that purchase cycle, Danielle. So I just wanted to give you just like a hot second to sort of elaborate on that. How can we use, once somebody's made a purchase, if they haven't done it, if they haven't given us a review yet, how can we use reviews to sort of start that conversation that gets them to that second purchase? If we can kind of like talk about both like the gathering and utilization of social proof, like in the exact same sentence real fast.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things. I think a post-purchase email series is incredibly important, especially for e-commerce clients. So after a visitor makes that initial purchase, getting them to purchase for a second time is incredibly challenging for most e-commerce brands, but also incredibly valuable, because once they make that second purchase, as I said earlier, getting them to make that third and fourth purchase becomes a lot more becomes a lot more frictionless. So one thing that I've seen work incredibly successfully is post-purchase. If a visitor makes a purchase in, let's say you are a makeup e-commerce brand, you make a purchase within a specific makeup category or product category. After you have made that first purchase, you have some brand affinity, you're familiar with the brand to some extent. Leveraging a positive review for a bestseller in a post-purchase email is incredibly powerful and incredibly valuable. So one way that a couple of my clients do it, one client I'm thinking of specifically, is post-purchase of making or buying one item, they'll send an email, I think it's about 30 days later, saying like, how are you loving your product so far? Asking for them to leave a review. We also think that you would enjoy this product as well, another one of our best sellers, and then it incorporates the reviews and the social proof that's been established by previous customers for that product. After 30 days for a product, of purchasing it rather, it's a pretty valuable moment.
Yeah. My mic was muted, and yeah, and for different kinds of products, that length can be shorter or longer. What I love about that is that you're both showing up the social proof of a potential upsell, as well as asking for it for your own, which kind of also like sort of frames the conversation.
Exactly, yeah. And I've seen clients do it both ways. One incorporating both both asks in one email, or incorporating both messages in different parts of the post-purchase series.
Absolutely, and that kind of brings us into sort of a debate that was happening throughout the scope of the presentation that, Josue, I'm going to bring you back in to address. We're talking about sort of the incentivization versus non-incentivization. We're not going to ask which is better, which is not, but I think one thing, too, that we can talk about is how to frame that ask to make it, like, to show that benefit, or to even make it just seem easier for our clients, rather than, like, either incentivizing or not incentivizing. Let's talk about the ways to make it's super easy for people to ask for reviews. And one thing that happened in the comments was people discussing, hey, what about review length? Is there a way we can sort of frame the ask by just telling people how long the review should be? Josue, have you seen any success in terms of like what sort of average length of reviews is the most successful, both in the request for a review and in the utilization of a review? Do you have any insight there in terms of review length, or is that kind of too ancillary to the actual value of reviews themselves?
I do think it's a little ancillary, just because it's so hard to, it's kind of hard to tell somebody or to ask somebody to tell you how they feel in X amount of characters. But I think if you frame this request in the way that you framed it before, is like, how do you use social proof to get more social proof? I would say is highlight the inherent value of social proof. And what I mean by that is that a lot of companies have found great success, especially non-e-commerce companies, where reviews are really about their service or the company itself. They make getting reviews a big deal. So they may send out an email saying, we've hit our 500th review, or we hit our 1000th review. What did you think about us? Or what do you think about us? Or you can kind of say, like, we're almost there to 500, we're almost there to 1,000, and you're really encouraging, again, your customers to be kind of part of a community and reflect a company by their brand and their reputation. I think that's a really good way to, again, engage with your customers at different points to try to get them to leave you a review. And usually the ones that are responding positively to that will probably leave you a positive review.
And it's just also one of those ways to sort of level people up through the customer life cycle as well. Like, even if you just get that review, you can still understand, you can re-segment those folks into like a different bucket. Like, this person left me a review, therefore I may be able to change the way I email market to them as well. They should be in a different bucket. It's one of those ways you sort of segment your audience as well, and that's one of those ways you build that behavioral internet, ladies and gentlemen, is by building those segmentations so you know the context of every relationship that you're building via your automated email process, via those triggered emails, via sort of the intelligent segmentation you apply to your email marketing program, and that sort of addresses a lot of the questions and sort of like firestorms we had throughout the comment section, and we're also getting dangerously close to the hour. So folks, audience, I've been delighted to have all of your questions here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Our amazing panelists, Danielle Auerbach, Conversion Director here at BounceX, you've been astonishing in terms of just bringing us the value of how to ask for social proof and then how to utilize it. Do you have any final thoughts from us, just how we can properly sort of complexly think about what is ultimately like one of the most complex sources of insight and also branding value on our website in terms of social proof?
Yeah, I mean, just think of it this way. Consumers have choice. Consumers have a lot of choice.
Mm-hmm.
You're much more likely to purchase something if you know that it is a product or a brand that is trusted by other people. With that said, you want to make sure that you are tracking the right behavior and you're leveraging social proof in the right moment when it's most relevant for that visitor. And when you're doing that, it's an incredibly powerful tool.
Awesome. And then Josue Ledesma, Content Marketing Manager over at Global Content Marketing Manager over at Trustpilot. Again, you're just so cool, man. Like, I've been blown away by your perspective here as well in terms of the best ways to understand how to measure that ask for reviews and how to utilize those reviews. And just thank you so much for bringing all the data and all these sort of like insights across. Audience, I hope you're checking out the Trustpilot blog. There's plenty of links to that in your GoToWebinar questions section. But Josue Ledesma, thank you so much for your perspective. Any final thoughts for us before we go ahead and read the credits here?
Yeah, sure. I think the one thing that I didn't get into is when talking about the best time to, or the best way to ask for reviews, seasonal changes are actually really important. We see that during the holidays. I think it's kind of expected that people are going to look for reviews a lot, but they actually leave reviews a lot throughout these winter months. So I'd say if you're really looking to jumpstart the amount of reviews you have, start now and don't stop until after January.
Awesome. All right, and that's really cool to see too. Like, this is the best time as well. This is your sort of social proof Super Bowl, ladies and gentlemen. So don't forget that, and make sure you're really sort of ramping up these policies as a part of your Black Friday and Cyber Monday strategy. With all of that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your amazing questions, panelists. Thank you so much for all your time, audience. Just so you're aware, the BounceX think tank is produced, hosted, and voiced by me, Peter Starr Northrop. Our associate producer for this presentation is Paul #TheMachineLee. Critical demand generation was generated by Jenny Hemmett over on the Trustpilot side. Thank you so much for all your amazing organization in terms of setting this presentation up. As just so you're aware as well, ladies and gentlemen, our script supervisor for this show is Dimas Martadharma, and our executive producer is Mara Corazente. Thank you so much for your time, ladies and gentlemen, and as always, we like to leave you with peace, love, and behavioral intelligence. Everyone be well. Thank you so much.